All right. Welcome, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started, maybe a few seconds early. But man, how about those announcements today? What did you guys think? Lots of new things to try. Oh man, I've got a lot of things I want to try now. And I know coming from the healthcare space, um, I'm always hounding our Databricks representative saying, "Hey, when's it going to be GA? When is it going to be HIPAA compliant?" Right? So something to look for. So many new announcements today. And actually, I probably would have changed some of my slides having the announcements. So you'll have to imagine that some of the slides that I share and the screenshots that I have, that it's the new and fancy agent framework, all those kind of things. So um, just want to do a quick introduction. Oh, first, um, forward-looking statement. Um, make sure to complete your surveys. We'd love your feedback. Quick introduction of myself. I'm a lead MLOps engineer at Intermountain Health. I graduated in math and statistics, and over the years have kind of morphed into this role, from statistician to data scientist to MLOps engineer. Um, and some key points along the way, I started a credit card bank right out of college and was quickly introduced to Git and Docker. I'm like, these things are amazing. I adopted Git for a ton of my work, pretty much all my code, even though it's just me, myself, right? But hey, it was great. And then Docker was able to utilize in various deployments of some of our pre-screening models that we used at the bank. Then at Intermountain Healthcare, I shifted focus to more data science and machine learning development, but still kind of held on to that the element of machine learning operations. And when one of the first projects I worked on there, when it took IT like 3 or 4 months to just replicate my R environment to run the model, I thought, oh, hey, this is a perfect use case for Docker, right? So that's a little bit about my experience. Personally, I love 3D printing and dabbling a little bit um, in robotics, but um, I, you can see my LinkedIn link there as well. Happy to get to know you guys a little bit more if you're interested in reaching out. So a little bit about Intermountain Health. Um, Intermountain Health recently merged with SEL Health. Gosh, maybe I can't say recently anymore. It's been a few years. And so our footprint, you can see, covers states in the Midwest and West. We have 33 hospitals, one of those being virtual. We also have an insurance plan called Select Health, and over 1 million members that have coverage through Select Health. So I think, was that last year that we surpassed 1 million? That's awesome. Sorry, I'm looking at, I have some Select Health colleagues here. Excited to have them here. And we have about 60,000 employees at Intermountain Health. And of course, you can't see it because the closed caption underneath, but Intermountain's mission is helping people live the healthiest lives possible. And I really love working for a mission-driven organization that has that as their mission. To give you a little bit of feel of our AI journey, Intermountain has a rich history, and part of that is because of some incredible development and work in the 70s to deploy, well, to build and create one of the first electronic medical records in the United States. And even before then, in the 60s, there was a cardiovascular team, researchers and physicians, that began work on kind of a huge list of kind of like if-then statements, rule-based logic to automate a lot of treatment for congenital heart disease, right? So the EMR enabled that to even go further. And so I joined Intermountain around 2016. about that time, we focused a lot on population health initiatives, like all the other healthcare organizations in the U.S., uh, and helped deploy the risk model that I mentioned a little bit earlier. And today, um, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, we stood up our enterprise AI center of enablement, and along with that kind of governance structure around AI, which has been really important. And then I feel like 80% of our use cases that our machine learning engineers are developing right now are in the generative AI space, right? So we had to, the AI industry is moving so fast, right? And um, I would say one of the biggest challenges we're just trying to keep up with the staff that we have. Um, and so this presentation is kind of a little bit glimpse into that journey for us, in adopting agents and making it a little bit more um, efficient when deploying those agents. Okay, so let me give you a background a little bit on our AI governance, and then we'll, we'll give a little bit of background on the agent, and then we'll talk about what LLMOps means. And I know some of these AI buzzwords are still being defined, so perhaps our definition is a little bit different than, um, yeah, but we try and stay in line. Anyway, so this is a picture of an application that we're currently developing to to basically collect information about the various AI products that we have implemented at Intermountain Health, along with um, we call this model card, along with information about our business owners, who's responsible, what are some of the features, what's the proposed solution, what's the value and impact it's going to create. We can start to integrate, and so this is a work in progress for sure. We can start to integrate some of the monitoring metrics and almost kind of put like a green, yellow, red badges on there to say good performance. Might need to check it out soon, and like, hey, you need to fix this. It's broken, right? Um, and so this is really challenging. We have a large organization, and despite our long AI history, uh, like AI in the past 2 years is like really taken off, and I'm sure you've all experienced the same thing. And so keeping all of this documentation up to date with all of our models, whether we developed it internally or whether we're using it from a third party, is incredibly challenging, right? And so we wanted to introduce our AI inventory agent to really help our what we call responsible AI leaders throughout the organization um, document the models that they're purchasing, the models that they're developing, and um, and make that documentation available, and follow kind of that process of like, okay, now you've got your model, let's make sure we have monitoring set up, have that connect back in. We can get a good feel of how these models are performing over time. And so this agent really um, we've just begun. This is a plan. The third bullet point is where we've really started focusing, is helping our business leaders kind of ideate the effort and impact estimation of these projects as they come up with these ideas, right? So that we can communicate to the ones writing the checks, like, hey, this is really going to be worth it. We really should invest, um, and here's the evidence, right? So the other things that we're excited about having this agent do is we want it to consolidate information from all these various systems, right? We've got our GitHub repositories, we've got our procurement software, we've got our cybersecurity software. There's so many applications out there that that have information about these AI products. We want to be able to consolidate all of those and provide that context when our responsible AI leaders are writing this documentation. Um, and then lastly, um, we're planning to have this agent uh, almost be like a chatbot assistant within this application, right? Um, to be able to help highlight, hey, here's a product that already exists that is kind of like the one you were describing about implementing. Do you want to use that? Like maybe that's a quicker path to implementing AI in this specific department within our organization. So talking a little bit about LLMOps, our team has really been created to create practices, tools, and processes for the organization to follow, and really make it so that we can not only be responsible in the AI that we're developing and deploying, um, but that it's scalable. And I know from the MLOps side, sometimes I think of scalable as like, okay, we can spin up all these compute clusters on the cloud and scale down like Kubernetes cluster, right? But even talking about people, right? Scaling people, providing them templates, providing them CI/CD processes that really simplify that deployment of their machine learning models and agents. And so that's been our team's focus, is really making sure we have the right infrastructure, but on top of that, that we have the right processes set up to make it the right way, the easy way. So giving you a little bit of feel of our machine learning operations structure today, um, you, you can see Databricks logos up there quite a bit, right? And we've utilized a lot of their tools and framework for our structure. Maybe by raising hands, how many of you here are familiar with the Databricks MLOps stacks? Saying quite a bit. Yeah, that's great. That's great. It's awesome. So a lot of the framework and CI/CD that we built has been based off of that. We began this build process about a year and a half ago, right? And I have received compliments like, "Wow, you guys were able to stand up all this structure." I'm like pointing to Databricks and our consultants. So like, they made a lot of it possible, and we adopted a lot of what they had built. And we'll talk a little bit about how we've um, customized that for our own purposes. Okay, so really, I'm going to focus on kind of four main areas here. We've got security. So you can see on the bottom left, we scanner, and then also on the top right, Azure Managed Identities, right? So we've made sure to partner with our cybersecurity team, trying to follow some of the standards for our organization. We're going to talk about the CI/CD and how we've adopted essentially MLOps stacks and kind of made it our own. And then we're going to talk about monitoring and model validation. Okay, so security. Very early on in our agentic AI journey, we sat down with our cybersecurity teams, and it's been incredible, right? Better than trying to sneak something in and hope that cyber doesn't come down on us later, right? So it was really helpful for us to sit down with our cybersecurity team, put together an agentic AI software development life cycle, right? And one of the main things we were going to be utilizing with our agents are Hugging Face models, right? Of course, all of these large language models, small language models published that we want to be able to utilize with protected health information, right? Really, really sensitive information. And so one of the things that they sat down with us and recommended is Protect AI Model Scanner. And so we created a virtual machine kind of partitioned off, no connections to our data. We could download these manually. We even had our download and scan these manually. Once we'd scanned them, we could then download them into Databricks. Cyber was comfortable with that, and then utilize them kind of within our private cloud network. So one of our ML engineers actually kind of built a package around this process just to fit our needs specifically, so that we could, just give it the model name and then the version hash, and it would scan the model and generate a text output file that we could then upload into a repository of approved models and versions, right? So um, this process has evolved, right? We started utilizing GitHub Actions to automate some of this process, and then I'm actually queuing up so many conversations with our cybersecurity team now after announcements, plus looking on Hugging Face. A lot of these models are scanned by Protect AI and JFrog already, right? And so um, going to work with them to further improve the process, make it simpler for us to use those in a secure way. The other thing that we partnered heavily with cybersecurity was on managed identities, Azure managed identities. So we use Azure and Azure Databricks. One of the um, out-of-box configuration for MLOps stacks is to utilize Azure Service Principals. And then you can imagine you're going to take your client ID, your tenant ID, and your client secret, and put those into your GitHub repos or Azure DevOps, wherever you store your code. And then that's how it's able to authenticate and deploy to our dev, test, and prod environments, right? You can imagine after we set up our first 30 repos, and then a year came along, and it's like, oh shoot, we've got to update the secrets on all these repos because Cyber said, hey, your service principal can't have a secret that lasts longer than 365 days, right? And it's like, oh, shoot, we need to go and update all this. So one of the biggest benefits about adopting managed identities is that there are no more secrets, right? You configure your managed identity to have access to a specific GitHub um, environment. That's the right word, sorry. And then once you run your GitHub action, it's very easy to authenticate within the Azure CLI, authenticate with the Databricks CLI, and then deploy your code to your Databricks environments. And so that was huge for us. Like for us, we didn't have to maintain secrets. And for cyber, they didn't have to worry about these secrets like floating around everywhere, where as soon as they discovered one from one repo, now they have the keys to the kingdom, right? They have keys to all of our repos. And that's where kind of the second part of this came in. And I was a little bit worried about this at first. Cyber said, we need you to do one managed identity per repo. Man, okay. But through that partnership, we're able to come to a common ground, right? And said, okay, will you guys allow us to create a Terraform template to deploy that managed identity, right? And then create a Databricks service principal associated with that managed identity. And so we were able to set up that full process. And now all we have to do is whenever we create a new repo, we just create a pull request to the Terraform repository, add that new repo name in, and it creates all of the required Azure resources and Databricks resources to be able to deploy our models into Databricks. So, and it kind of highlighted the process that goes through, right? So we have our developer working in a Git repository, they publish, create a pull request, and then that kind of kicks off that automated process to deploy to the Databricks workspace, you know, whether that's a batch inference job or an endpoint. We utilize the Databricks asset bundles on top of this process to essentially deploy to those different environments automatically. Okay, so a little bit about our CI/CD process. Credits to Databricks. This is from their big book of MLOps. You can Google and search. You can Google and research for yourself. But we essentially adopted most of this framework for our CI/CD, right? Across the top in the gray, you can see our, we utilize GitHub for our version tracking. And then we have 3 Databricks workspaces, dev, test, prod. And then depending on, our developers are developing in dev, they'll make a pull request into the main branch. That kicks off our unit and integration tests. Well, first it um, deploys and trains the model within the test environment, runs some integration tests, and then if it all goes successfully, we merge into main, cut a release branch, and then that will deploy to production. So we were using their templates. They really helped us kickstart our journey. About a month ago, we decided we'd been making so many customizations to our version of the MLOps stacks that we finally just cut the cord and decided to maintain our own internal copy of and templates of deploying classic ML models, agents, and apps. For those of you that are familiar with MLOps stacks, this is kind of the folder structure on the right-hand side of the notebooks and Databricks asset bundles and basically your full ML project, right? We kind of took this template and customized it for agents as well. And so I just want to highlight here we were able to utilize pretty much everything that was built. And the highlight in red and green are the only things we really had to change when thinking about agents versus classic ML, right? So instead of training a model with some data and then validating it and then deploying that model, the agent workflow resource you'll see on the bottom right. I need to get my rights and lefts correct. I keep saying right, my right, you're right. Anyway, you're right. The workflow resource now is create the agent, validate the agent, and then deploy the agent as an endpoint. So this shows you the visual. I don't know if you've done workflows or jobs in Databricks, but this shows you kind of that visual of our new workflow in deploying this agent to each of these environments. I want to highlight a little bit more detail on the validate piece, and this is where we're getting to the area where the announcements today change these things slightly, but the principles are still the same, right? So I've put some code up here of like really how easy it is to utilize MLflow to evaluate a model that you have or an agent that you've deployed, right? It's really small, but in the middle of the screen, you see MLflow evaluate. I think with MLflow 3, now it's MLflow Gen AI evaluate, right? And maybe some of the arguments within it changed slightly, right? But within there, I have an evaluation data set. And rethinking this, I probably should have showed you. So I've created this evaluation data set in a notebook. There are lots of different ways, and I just learned a few more ways to do this at some of the talks here. But in a notebook, you can create pandas data set, right? That pandas data frame that has your expected, or sorry, the request that's made to your agent, the expected response, right? And so when you pass this into the evaluate function, it's going to send all of your requests through your agent and generate a response. And so now you have your expected response and your generated response. And there's multiple ways you can do this. If you have a RAG, you can say, well, here's the context that I gave it. And there's other features. I'll show you one, some of the guidelines that we set up for this initial project. And then I really liked, I was doing a lot of this interactively in the notebook, right? I really liked that it popped up a nice little button. I click on it, and it takes me right to the experiment that has all these traces. And right off the bat, you can look at these numbers and say, oh man, this one's terrible, right? And this was our baseline model. It wasn't really sophisticated. It was just some prompts. thrown at OpenAI, um, ChatGPT, right? 4.0, and right off the bat, I mean, you can see some of the LLM judge metrics that were automatically created here. So because I gave it an expected response, it it decided like, okay, let's add a correctness judge, right? And so it's taking the expected response, comparing it to the generated response, and asking the LLM again, hey, were you correct in the response that you gave, right? And so you can see we've got pretty low estimates there. It also had safety was out of the box, right? I think we're good with safety, 100%. It's interesting. Sometimes our medical um, notes and stuff can flag some of those unsafe comments. You know, someone gets like a dog bite, or I mean, it's interesting sometimes what it chooses to flag. Um, and then you can see I've added a new column here called reasoning, and so this one was super simple to add, and I just added it as a guideline. I just said, hey, I don't necessarily care so much how close my estimates are on impact and effort, right? Thinking about our use case. But I do care about the reasoning behind that, right? Did it walk them through, um, you know, 30-day readmission rate decrease because we've got this new AI product that's going to help, right? And so it was really easy to set that up, and I'm excited to try some of the additional um, tools that are provided in this agent framework that they just announced today. So let's look into one of the good examples here, right? So on the very top left, you can see the prompt, hello, right? And I told it I expect a response that said, hey, I'm ready to help you today with your estimating the effort and impact for your AI product, right? And that's what it said, and it judged itself correct. And I really love that it gives the explanation here as well. Um, and then again, at the bottom, you can see the first time I did the reasoning, this one was flagged as a fail, right? It's like, you said hello and then it responded, but there really wasn't any reasoning behind it. I'm like, oh, okay. Add in a little bit more text here to say if they're not asking for the effort and impact, then just ignore it, because we don't really need to judge this one for reasoning um, because it's not relevant, right? So so now with the new prompt for that guideline, we passed. Okay, let's look at failure. So once again, I really love the descriptions here, right? So if you probably can't read the detail on that root cause failure, but one of the things that I got hung up on was kind of that correctness, right? So we saw that correctness, and it's clearly obvious what the problem is, and we're still working at it. That's why it's under development. Um, but one of the things, maybe I'm just going to pause and reiterate a practice that I'm going to say, like, definitely have this as practice. So on the title up here, it says custom benchmark data. Like, I'm going to say, I'm, as an MLOps person, maybe data scientists are not happy with me about this, but like, create a custom benchmark data set for your agent, right? Like, out the gate. Like, you want to be able to tell a difference on how it's performing with each iteration you make, right? If you're just prompt hacking, right, for a specific use case, and then it's like, oh yeah, it looks good, deploy, right? Um, how do you know that didn't break the other 95%, right? Um, how do you know that, right? And so creating this custom benchmark set and making sure that this validation is in your process or evaluation of your agent in your deployment process will really save you from like kicking yourself because it's like, oh shoot, we just broke 95 of the other prompts, 95% of the other prompts. Now I have to go back and fix everything. And you just never have that good measure between what you had and what you improved it to be, right? So always, always, always create that benchmark data set. And even at the beginning, like here with our bench, our baseline agent, right? We're making sure we have it. And the nice thing is that Databricks gives you tools to even generate some of those initially. Um, there are some other tools. Oh, actually, I go back. Um, the reason it got it wrong here is I gave it an expected response to say that we needed 180 hours of an ML engineer, 30 hours or 80 hours for an MLOps engineer, 30 hours for a data architect, right? Yada yada yada. But it said 120 instead of 180 for the AI ML engineer, and all the numbers are wrong, right? And for us, it's like, well, yeah, okay, this makes total sense because we didn't give it context. We didn't give it the context of like, hey, here's 40 other projects that we previously did and the impact and effort that we previously estimated that you can use as a reference point to generate these new estimates, right? So because of that, we run it once, it says 180. We run it again, it says 5,693, right? We run it another time, it says 3, right? So it's just kind of pulling things out of the model, right? Just guessing. Um, okay. Once you have your evaluation set up, right, and integrated into your deployment process, the next step is monitoring what you have in production, right? For drift, right? Or drift, whether that's input, output, stuff like that. So one of the things that I put up here was the tool, and this again, Databricks has much better, much fancier tools that they announced today on labeling, right? Um, but out of the box, when we deploy an agent, it has this review app available. You go to the endpoint, you click the use button, and there's a review agent underneath that use, right? And so you can kind of chat with it, and you can see here, I'm giving it feedback, right? And maybe this is a really good way as a start when you're building this interactively to start creating um, your benchmark data set, right? And like I said, with MLflow and the tracing that's done and the new tools they showed, you can uh, much more easily create that benchmark data set and track it um, and use it for these purposes. So, but you can see I'm marking this one as safe, professional, and it's the right length. And I just give that feedback. And now that's kept in a data set, uh, uh, a payload data set within your Unity catalog, right? Um, one of the other things that's nice is that when you deploy an agent, it also automatically deploys a second endpoint called feedback, right? And so you can take it a step further and integrate this type of feedback into your custom built application as well. Okay, so I'm really 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 excited for the new agent framework monitoring. It's currently in beta. It's not GA, so we can't really use it, right, at Intermountain Health. So one of the things that is GA that you can use, well, okay, maybe the Databricks people should correct me if I'm wrong here, but Lakehouse monitoring, right? Lakehouse monitoring is set up today, like you can set up your own custom metrics on any table that you have, right? And so this is a little bit of workaround for us right now because we can't use beta features. Um, but you can see here that I just have gone through the UI to define, and you can do all these things through APIs as well, right? Um, and kind of build them into your CI/CD processes. But you can see I've defined a custom metric called latency, um, and defined that. And then when I set this up for a time series table, I can see that latency over time, and whenever it drops or goes higher than a certain threshold, I can set up a SQL alert to send me a notification, right? This was just a screen recording that I got from the web page up the top. But this is the monitoring feature that's beta. And the thing that I love about this is that when you utilize the agent SDK to deploy an agent, like this is automatically set up, right? You don't really have to do anything, right? I mean, you're probably going to go and customize which metrics it's going to be monitoring over time and submit that to the API or SDK. But um, this is just beautiful to me. I'm really excited about this. So you can see it already has latency there. It has a number of tokens, errors, and then up the top again it had and see even what I showed you earlier, right? So really excited about being able to utilize this in the future. Okay, so we talked a little bit about those different frameworks. We talked about our customizations as far as security at Intermountain Health. We've talked about setting up our CI/CD process and customizing it again for our purposes, and then really the importance of evaluating and monitoring those products. And so what's next for us, right? Really, as far as the application goes, this AI inventory agent, sorry, I should say agent goes, we're definitely going to be working to increase its knowledge and capabilities, right? Right now, as it is, it's baseline. We've got the pipeline set up to deploy, and now we can really iterate and improve that. One of the things they announced today, I'm super excited about. It's bittersweet a little bit because I'm really excited about the MLflow 3 features and kind of the shift towards model versus run ID. And although with some of the syntax changes, the part that I'm like, oh man, now we gotta go change all our repos again and update and upgrade to get the newer features. But really excited about that. And then excited about future agent framework additions with monitoring. We're going to be setting that up for this, but maybe won't have to by that time because it'll just be automatic. And then some of the other things that we're going to do to integrate with our current responsible AI governance system is we're going to set up our performance alerting, right? So on top of those monitors, we want to watch over time and say, okay, our relevance, our correctness, or whatever metric we're monitoring has dropped to a certain level that we're not comfortable with, right? Send an alert to someone, tell that ML engineer, hey, go check out your agent, check out your model, it needs to be fixed, right? And then kind of full circle here, we're gonna integrate that monitor and alerting back into our AI governance application so that we can very easily communicate to our business leaders and AI governance committee how all these AI products are performing at Intermountain Health. So I'm really excited about the future, but we have a minute for any questions you may have.